Hello, my name is Nikita Anderson, and I am currently a student at North Carolina State University, looking forward to teach middle school social studies. Today, I will be discussing gender bias and its effects in education and the classroom. First, what is gender bias? Gender refers to the characteristics that make people identify as either male or female. Bias is defined as prejudice in favor of or against one thing, person, or group compared with another, usually in a way which is considered to be unfair, according to the Oxford Dictionary. Gender bias is a type of gender stereotype. These types of bias reflect a person's belief about which behaviors are acceptable for females and males. In a classroom setting, gender bias is a type of educational bias that describes a tendency for instructors to show preference to one gender over another. Sometimes gender biases can negatively influence how children behave and learn due to false assumptions about how they should be as a person of a specific gender. For example, a common gender stereotype is that males are strong and aggressive while females are weaker and more nurturing. If an instructor needs someone to take out the trash and another person to sweep the classroom, they may find themselves almost always choosing a boy to handle the trash while always choosing a female to sweep. If this continues, eventually the children will associate sweeping with females and taking out the trash with males. Although it is possible for either gender to perform either one of those tasks, the instructor's traditional beliefs about a man's role in society versus a woman's role in society have influenced the children's belief about which gender is allowed to perform specific tasks through repetitive behavior. John Santrock, the author of Educational Psychology, offers that most children have developed a sense of which activities are associated with being male and female by the time they even enter elementary school. But why is this? Children first develop a sense of who they are and how they should act by observing their caregivers or parents and then modeling after them. Usually, girls learn the female's role in society from their mothers, while boys learn the male's role in society from their fathers. However, children also learn from their environment and the social interactions between others. Traditionally, in American society, it was customary that males should be masculine while females should be feminine. However, recently, the belief that both males and females should have both masculine and feminine traits has become more popular and acceptable. Once psychologists began to study the differences between these two genders, they found that there is little to no difference between males and females in terms of performance abilities in math and science, or even in overall intelligence. However, there is still a common misconception that boys are better than females in these areas. This could lower the confidence of females, preventing them from performing at their highest potential. But this can also damage the confidence of males when they do not meet the social expectations. Although there may be some behavioral differences between males and females, it is apparent that social cues play a large role in how and what behaviors are expressed. Therefore, to close the gaps between males and females, we should show both genders performing tasks that are untraditional until it becomes the new cultural norm. Unfortunately, most people are unaware of their tendency to display gender biases. So it is important to discuss gender bias and stereotyping problems within school systems, learn how to identify decisions that may reflect gender biases, and encourage school workers to create healthy learning environments that provide equal opportunities for both males and females. These five resources can help give further insight to what gender bias is and how we can prevent it. The Delaware State Education Association lists some common examples of gender bias in the classroom, in addition to some indicators of gender bias and tips to avoid gender bias in the classroom. EdChange.org advocates for justice and equality within schools. There is also an article on gender bias in education written by Amanda Chapman that includes information on research studies that show socialization relates to gender bias. The TED Talk on gender bias, featuring Rowen Rubien, is a short 20-minute TED Talk that sheds light on the responsibility of educators, discusses institutional sexism in education, and how we can work towards solving these issues. And then the article by Carol Sue Marshall, Gender Issues in the Classroom, offers 5 ways that we can help beat gender bias in the classroom. Let's take a look at the Delaware State Education Association's uh, paper on gender bias in the classroom. As you can see, this is a great website because it includes examples of biased behaviors such as minimal wait times for female answers and how boys are more likely to receive attribution to effort and ability. Also, indicators of gender bias that we can ask ourselves, such as do I have a higher level of questions of each gender, or do I use gender free language in the classroom, as well as tips for avoiding gender bias in the classroom. In conclusion, please remember that in the classroom we should strive to reduce gender bias by creating an inclusive classroom culture. Susan Butler's blog on sharemylesson.com offers these 5 simple ways we can help reduce gender bias. Create an open school environment, using inclusive language, be aware of current gender biases, think about your own conduct, and most importantly, teach acceptance. Hopefully, this presentation has helped you better understand what gender bias is and ways to prevent it from happening in your classroom. Remember, there is little to no there is little to no difference between the learning abilities of males and females. Don't be afraid to have high expectations for everyone. Ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask your class or colleagues whether or not they believe improvements need to be made in your classroom to make it feel more inclusive. And lastly, gender bias can occur implicitly. So don't feel too bad if you unconsciously find yourself being biased. Just do your best to create changes. With that being said, how will you make your classroom more gender inclusive?